Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining PR Newswire's webinar. This is the first in a series of webinars in Asia Pacific, and our next webinar is in Singapore and also Malaysia in the month of April. We hope that this will help you stay connected and also keep you updated on what's going on in the communications industry. My name is Royce Shi from PR Newswire, and I'll be your host today. So today we will discuss some best practices on brand communications during times of uncertainty. As we're all taking precautions against the global COVID-19 pandemic, there's been varying degrees of communications from brands, with some brands choosing to stay quiet during these uncertain times, while other brands have been more active in communicating with the public and the media. During the past few months, PR Newswire has published a lot of corporate news around this topic, specifically discussing how brands are providing relief efforts to the coronavirus pandemic. And we've also published best practices materials to help communicators with their work. Today, we'll get a media's view of the global pandemic and the types of corporate news they want to see from brands. So we're very excited to have Luisa Tam from SCMP join us. Luisa Tam, now senior editor at the South China Morning Post, has held a variety of roles during her more than 30 years career, including working as a producer for NDR German TV, a media campaigner with Greenpeace, deputy managing editor of Eastern Express, and op-ed editor of SCMP. Luisa is a passionate advocate for children's rights, animal welfare, and the environment. For those of you online watching this live, if you have any questions for Luisa, please type into the Q&A chat box, and I'll ask Luisa these questions for you. Luisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Royce. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to have this opportunity because this is a time that we can't really have face-to-face communication, but it's important we keep the communication channel open. For us, it's quite difficult because as a newspaper, our job is to see people, to meet face-to-face, to see and bring the stories to the public. But now we can't see our contacts, our interviewees, so we have to do it, from home because we, unfortunately, over the last 3 weeks, we have 2 confirmed cases, and a number of our colleagues are also in lockdown as well. So we all have to work from home. We've been working from home for almost a month now, on and off, And it is quite difficult because we are, intrinsically, we are an operation that has to deal with people. We can't. And we have to do with what we've got now. And working from home to bring the story, we cannot be on the ground. So it's important to be able to, as a news organization, to sometimes get ahead of the news. But now we can't really get ahead of the news because we have to follow the news and see what's happening. So the most we can do is bring the true picture to the audience, to the readers, not just in Hong Kong, but around the world. We just hit 40 million readership just at the beginning of last week. So it is good that we have this huge advantage, this huge privilege of having such a big audience. It also means that we have a huge responsibility. We have to make sure that news truly reflects the situation. And that's what we're doing. And I'm sure that, not being on the ground, not being able to be in touch with your audience or brands and communications, people with your clients, it's important that that how to, in these difficult circumstances, still be able to be in touch in a different way, which is through the internet. So that's what we're doing now. And I hope today what we share, we can be able to have an idea what you can do as much as what we can do as communicators in the media sector to bring the news out, to bring your stories out, to bring our stories out. And I've been myself doing a lot of cultural stories and also Hong Kong stories, and I also do some videos about the Hong Kong culture and the Cantonese language as well. So I hope today you enjoyed and take away something that maybe that what I'm sharing with you is not everything you can take away, but at least you can learn something, how you can position yourself in this difficult time and also position yourself out of this difficult time a few weeks or maybe a few months down the road.
Great. Thank you, Luisa, for that introduction. So let me start off with asking you some questions. The first question What do you think is the biggest challenge in the media industry right now?
As I said earlier, it is difficult for us. First of all, we are communicators. We need to not just communicate with the audience outside or with our subject matters to the package story. We also have to communicate with each other. And for that matter, it is difficult. And fortunately, we have the technology. We can all work from home, including production team. Besides the online viewership, we have 40 million. We also have a print medium as well, the newspaper. You still see a newspaper outside. We still have to put the paper together. That is the most important. And sometimes when you do interviews, like when you deal with clients and customers, you have to have that organic, face-to-face interaction. But now we don't have that. And how do we overcome that? Of course, we are very adaptable creatures. We still manage to do it like through video call, like through phone call, or whatever that you can get, video conferencing and things like that. But the most important is to bring the true picture, which we over and over again emphasize. There are so many stories out there. Just this morning, my friend emailed me something about a doctor, an Italian doctor, has some, precautionary measures about, taking those measures to protect yourself. I have to take it with a big pinch of salt because out of the good intention, my friend sent me the email, the information. I have to make sure I screen it. The same that we do as media. We are so eager to get information left, right, and center. We have to filter them. Not just common sense, but you have to check your sources, check it whether it comes from a really good source, a reliable source. A lot of people are just trying to get ahead of the news without being a news person by distributing news around the world and not knowing that the consequences could be quite negative. For example, just recently, about a week ago, you probably heard about this, I think it's a fund manager, some kind of wealth manager, that, he did a kind of test video on the MTL about kind of like a spoof to maybe make fun or to kind of, present the picture that people get overly excited, overly nervous and about the whole situation. And by licking his finger and then put the whatever on the railing, the pole, whatever. And it's supposed to be internal consumption between his friends. However, somebody sent it outside the group and became viral news, and he got into big trouble. Could be legal problem too. So we have to be careful when we, as a news person, and even you as an individual, trying to circulate news, that's the news that you get from your private channels, like, this particular video, you have to make sure it is from the right source. If you don't know, don't do anything about it. Just like a news person, we all have that responsibility now because we all have a platform. You can go to talk to the world through your IG platform, through your media, whatever the platform you have video, you talk to the world. So you are, in a sense, a news distributor. You have to be responsible. So us, especially, we're journalists, we're trained that way. The difficulty is make sure we can't really have other ways to source or confirm or verify a source. We have to be extra careful. At the same time, we're fighting with time to bring the news out as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, because the numbers, the situation changes so quickly. So that is our difficulty. And maintaining the integrity of what we do is the most important, as well as people who are actually doing branding as well.
Yeah, that's definitely very challenging, especially with the pace of news moving very fast, and also to be able to check sources so that our reputable media outlets are not spreading any fake news. Right? That's very, very important. Thank you for that. So
sometimes Roy, may not be fake news and maybe just inaccurate. When you go to a source, even a big, a tabloid newspaper in the UK, I keep getting information, from my friend forwarding it to me. Sometimes the news story itself might have something, part of it is accurate, part of it is exaggerated. We have to make sure, we as a sensible human being and adult, the professional, how to digest it, to filter it. We have to be, very mindful of that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, so given the complexity and the speed of what's happening right now globally, would you say that this outbreak is an opportunity, or is it a challenge for the PR and marketing industry?
It's definitely a challenge, but you can turn the challenge around to deal with it first and to turn it around to see how you can fit in, to be able to move with this challenge and insert some kind of solutions from the point of view of your brand or your service. For example, a good example is about 2 weeks ago, middle of March, we have the brand, the famous, world famous, luxury brand Dior and Givenchy. They come up with the idea of turning the factory, the production line of perfume into producing hand sanitizers, and then distribute these sanitizers, hand sanitizers, free of charge to the health authorities in France, which is a fantastic move because at the beginning of when the virus, the outbreak first started, was mostly this part of the world, but around March it was like caught everybody by surprise in Europe. So that was a fantastic kind of CSR move, and it's such a gigantic gesture that it helped other people at the same time kind of like wake up to the core that we have to do something because we are all in the same boat. And no matter you are providing a service that's luxury or a dining service, Cha-Chan-Teng down in Central in Hong Kong, you are a part of this community. This is the first time, SARS wasn't as dramatic as out of control as this particular virus. At that time, I think it only affected maybe no more than 24 countries. Now this is all over the world now. So this is a huge experience as, one entity of humanity to actually deal with the trouble together. So we have to look at it as a challenge because when we don't look at it as a challenge, we don't know how to make sure that we do everything safely. So once you tackle it, look at it as a challenge and do something accordingly, you can take the stand back a little bit and think how I can, be able to help others as well as my company to turn this around as an opportunity, at the same time helping others. I think the attitude is important to know where your brand and your service stand, and then from that point of view to see how you can benefit others. So this is a perfect time as far as, our CSR policy is concerned to actually push out your CSR policies in the real world to make it work, to make it benefit both the community and, from the brand point of view.
Great, thanks, Louisa. Given that most of the people on this webinar are from brands, right, and most are from the PR profession, what advice would you give to PR professionals and communicators during this time of crisis?
I think it's most important as we as news people think, the news, we produce news that's relevant. And as a brand or service provider, you have to be relevant. For example, nowadays I'm still getting a lot of press releases about certain companies or restaurants producing or pushing out like buffets and meal packages, and without any consideration of what's happening. How can people still go and have family gatherings? They can't. I mean, it's still important to be visible, but you got to be visible in the right kind of context. Don't be visible for the sake of, oh my God, because of the virus, I cannot promote my service, my hotel. You really can't do it at this point. You can do it in a way that you have the whole situation in context. Otherwise, you'll be seen or perceived as being irrelevant, or even worse, you trivialize the whole situation for the sake of your own branding. So it is important for brands and services and companies to be able to move along with the development of the virus, i.e., some companies are coming out, like as I said, the previous example of Dior and Givenchy having their free hand sanitizers to replace the perfume production line. And as a smaller gesture, maybe you can help to supply free medical protective gear for the needy in Hong Kong, for the people who are being overlooked or being neglected. Or you can try to provide services, because through online you can provide expertise. Like we've seen, some celebrities overseas have been producing masterclasses. In a way, your company, if you can offer something or even help the needy that they need tutoring, you can find a package to set a platform up and then help those children at home. They cannot have English tutor or whatever. You can provide some kind of service within your capacity, but not go beyond what your capabilities. That's important. I come across one very interesting company. I don't want to name the brand, but it's a very famous luxury international kind of watch manufacturer. They had a fantastic idea of putting out, using the senior management officials, the senior staff, to produce some kind of online timeshare, because it's a timepiece manufacturing company. So timeshare is a relevant theme for them. But the problem with that is they have such a convoluted way for me to sign up online to look at the package they're offering. I gave up after 2 tries. When you are producing something give it to the community. You want to share something. It could be tangible, like products you want to share, or online, sharing platform like this. You have to think about throwing all the corporate rules out of the window. You cannot make it so formal. You got to sign in. You got to have the password. You're going to have this and verify. Don't do that. Make it accessible. One click, people can go to your platform to see what you're offering free online. That is important. The sharing, there's a whole spirit is about sharing, not going to the corporate thing, the usual thing we had in the past, like all these firewalls and, have passwords. Be accessible. When you want to do something with our whole global village now, we are one global village, one global community, make it accessible because there's no distance between us. You could be in Europe 10,000 kilometers away or just down the road in Tsim Sha Tsui. We are one community. Sharing at the authentic, on the ground as much as possible. That's the most important. People can relate to you. All brands have to make it relatable. Like we, as news organization, we make stories very, very relatable. We can't tell people the size of the epidemic. We can say it is as big as Europe. That's how many people are affected. Make it relatable. So can you, as a brand or as a company, offering services.
Great, thanks, Luisa. So my next question, I think a lot of communicators are wondering, during this time, right, what are, if it's not directly related to COVID-19, like what are the types of stories or news or, story angles that PR professionals can use during this time? Because I think a lot of us are afraid to, we want to be able to seize this opportunity, but at the same time, we don't want to seem opportunistic, by taking advantage of the situation. So what types of stories would you say would be good during this time?
It's a very good point because you want to be able to help. If you can help, like what I put the example earlier, Dior and Givenchy, solid, tangible, you really produce something, but you can't do that. Some companies are doing small gestures like donating food coupons and what have you, that services they can use further down the line. But you can't do something that's very COVID-19 related. Somehow, as a relief services you're providing for the community, you can do something extremely different because people still want, human interest stories. They still want to know what's happening. They still want to know what's going to happen 2 months, 3 months down the line. We all prepare for the worst, like this could last this summer, like maybe 3 more months to go. But we're all hoping maybe 1 month, 2 weeks, or whatever down the line, there is something life will be back to normal. So what your services can do 2 weeks or a month down the line, prepare for that. And maybe this is not the time to release that kind of information, that kind of services you have planned, but position yourself to be ready for that. In the meantime, if you have human interest stories, like, for example, what your staff are doing to help each other within the company, what the CEO, is doing to help his staff, their staff to cope with the situation, that is important. You can also bring to the public information about human stories. Look within your company, what your company is doing to help your staff, or maybe even help your supply chain people down there, your suppliers, how you can cope, how you operate. People are quite curious with this kind of thing. Like stories don't always have to be about people who are suffering. It can be about heroes possibly turning to zero. That you think that they might lose everything. Like interesting stories. Like you just have to find a human face to the COVID-19 outbreak, because people want to know what others are doing to help each other and to help yourself. Survival story, tips as well. If you can come up with something. I think making it personal, putting a human face to it. Get the CEO to come out, get the CEO to come out to talk about the experience of coping with it. Do videos, because everybody is stream, doing online presentation. Just go online and talk. I think send your press release out so when people get into the story, it's organic. I think that's the most important, organic and authentic.
All right, thank you, Luisa. So we've got a lot of audience questions. So I'm going to start asking some of them that are related to what you were just talking about. For example, wait. Sorry, I'm pulling up some of this. So
hope everybody is okay.
Yeah, I hope everyone's okay.
Doing all right this morning?
Okay, so one question is, most of the coverage is currently on the COVID-19 situation, or somehow ties back to it. Everyone, hence, tries to tap on this to figure out a story angle that ties to it so that journalists can cover the topic, but it doesn't always make sense to do so. Instead of trying to force the issue and a story angle together, how else can we appeal to journalists during this time?
I think, as I said earlier, if you don't have an angle to present, I think stay put, don't do anything, because you don't want to be seen to be grandstanding, exploiting the opportunity. I think just see what's happening and how you can play a part in the story development, because we are all involved in this COVID-19 story unfolding. We are part of it, the whole world. And look at it from an angle like what you would like to read. Don't look at it as a brand, as a company, desperately trying to push the brand to be visible, to be visible. You don't have to, but see from the point of view that, what would I like to know? What's happening to my favorite company? What's happening to my favorite shop? For example, I saw a video quite interesting. I don't know whether anybody of you have come across this, but about a little girl crying, about not able to go to KFC to eat, not able to go to all these things. And she even asked for not even Chinese food because they can't go out. And then she said, Mommy said, I have to cook for you. You have to eat Mommy's cooking. That, in a way, is branding, because the girl repeated so many times about a very local fast food shop and KFC and all those, what have you. So sometimes, I think sometimes the story will build itself. You have, as a brand, maybe sometimes go in the community from the point of view as a consumer, what you would like to see out there with certain services that you no longer be able to obtain, to get the service, to get the food. From that point of view, what kind of stories would you like to hear from these brands that you have been, isolated, pulled away from because of the isolation and what have you, the lockdown? So not twisting, not trying to force an angle, but look at what is necessary out there, what is required, and what you can fit into that requirement organically. Try to be organic. Remember, two things most important is authentic and organic. Don't push it. It's authentic. It has to come from the heart. As I said, you want to look at stories, sometimes if you look inward, to look at your company, your staff, what they are doing to help out each other, not necessarily the community doing such big gestures, but the coping. And what the company is doing to help them cope without deducting their leave, without forcing them to go on, unpaid leave, that kind of thing. What your company doing is going to be so important to brand you, to make people remember you, etch it on the memories that you are such a good company, and in future it will go a long way. And you don't even have to do any more branding if people remember what you've done during this difficult time.
Great, thank you. So another question is, what is the extent of transparency that the media should adhere to? Should media withhold or go all out? What role is media playing to ensuring that panic does not consume the public?
Like what I said earlier, it's important to verify our sources. We don't act on speculation. We don't act on, obviously over-exaggerating news, or we have to filter it. We go to the experts. We also, when we are reporting, I don't know whether you've noticed about the latest cluster from Lan Kwai Fong. There are, when it first came out, I think it came out on Friday, a number of those infected cases from Lan Kwai Fong came from a band that were playing live music in one of the bars. So, of course, they are Filipino band members. We didn't want to talk about it because we didn't want to single out a particular group of people in community to stir up unnecessary, undue criticism or discrimination against a certain group of people. So it's important when we look at information, we are transparent. We say, okay, we look at how many people the cluster coming from Lan Kwai Fong, but we don't have to focus on certain things that will create undue discrimination or panic, because it doesn't help the story. It doesn't matter what nationality they are. they're infected, they need, isolation and treatment. So it's important. The judgment call is important. So it's all up to the senior, to the masthead, the senior management, the senior editors to be able to decipher what is common, what is public interest, what is not. So that balance is important. And brands to company, when you do something, this is a time to act. This is a time not to release this kind of information. It's all about judgment. It comes down to, common decency and common sense. I think it transcends, benefits, private, private vested interests.
Thanks, Luisa. So I'm reading a lot of questions from the audience who is asking similar things, which is, they have news, but they're afraid that if it doesn't tie to the COVID-19 epidemic, then, it's not relevant, right? And so one of our audience members said, my company just recently won an award. Is it a good time to announce it?
No, I'm sorry, it's not. Because it will be seen as by you navel gazing, you're thinking about yourself. Unless your award has something to do with beating, COVID-19 and alleviating the social pressure at the moment, because it will be buried. People will, honestly, if you come through, even could be my friend, I come through, I will just delete it. Because my time is focused on COVID-19 related stories, because I don't cover news. News will cover COVID-19 related stories. I'll look at what can be sort of like tangibly related to it. What could be like something, for human interest. Companies that are doing something to help out, like one of the, I think, Impact Hong Kong doing something to help to crowdfund money for the McDonald's refugees to be able to sleep somewhere because McDonald's now don't open 24 hours, find hotels for them or hostels for them. Things like that you're related to the story, but not in the center of the COVID-19 stories. Anything that's the two company content focus, maybe it's not the time to do it, please.
Yeah. So what are some of the, so from the media, this is just my question. Besides like business news, financial news, and basically hard news about the coronavirus, what are, like, for example, lifestyle editors or F&B, travel, like what are they focused on in terms of publishing the stories? Because it can't all be about COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes, like for example, today we have like a fashion story, but related to how North Korea is kind of like taking advantage of the situation because China is no longer, has all the factories closed, and in North Korea who are claiming that they have no cases, they are, keep rolling with the factory, so they're picking up the slack basically. So that is not exactly COVID-19, but it's COVID-19 related, fashion manufacturing story. So we run that, and we run stories about what companies are doing, or people providing master classes online to teach people how to make their own face masks. So that's, fashion related too, and how to make, yourself look more presentable, look after your skin if you wear your mask for too long. That is the COVID-19, but also a self-skincare story. So you find an angle that even though it may not be completely like, a center of the COVID-19 focus story, but it's related because in many ways, actually in every way, our life is being, affected, modified, changed because of this. We're adapting to a different world now. So your story, you play these brands and service providers have played a role in the past in helping us, with our daily life. You still play a role now because life has changed, different from what it used to be. But still, every brand, every company is still playing a role. But how do you evolve into this new circumstance? That's the tricky part. That is the thing that you have to deep down into thinking your strategy, the company capabilities, how you can move forward, move along now, and move forward and move ahead in future.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question from the audience asking if you could give some advice on tackling unverified news during this crisis. Because I think, as you mentioned earlier, about each one of us are the media, especially all the things that we're sharing on social media and stuff like that. How do we verify and this type of news during this crisis?
But first of all, don't believe things that cut and paste. My friend this morning cut and paste something from a doctor from Italy. I sourced it. It's all in Italian. I don't know how she got the information in English. I couldn't even translate it myself. So you have to make sure the source doesn't come from any kind of like cut and paste information from a friend's friend, even from a close, reliable source. It has to be from a reliable news source that you can actually track their online performance. You can see their online website. You can, look at newspapers around the world. You know the number of international papers that you can trust. You know that you don't take information from somebody cut and paste to you. You don't circulate things that, come from like any social media that with no news organization, news track record background. I think that's important. And ultimately, it's about common sense. And if something that's too crazy to be believed, then why would you believe it? Somebody said, in Korea or in Thailand, they have a cocktail that can cure it. Come on, you just have to use the common sense. It has to come from mainstream. This is a time that people really have to go back to mainstream news organizations now, not just the minor little online website media, online, two-man band, that kind of thing. You have to go to mainstream now.
Yeah, okay. So another question, what is the best way to engage a journalist right now, when they receive so many more emails and pitches given the current news environment? What's your suggestion on how best to engage a journalist?
I think if you have a close relationship with the media, with a media person, like me very well, you can maybe send me an email, see what you're doing, up to date, and say you can if you know them, you can say, well, our CEO is coming up with this idea. What do you think about? Would you be interested? I think go more sort of tailor-make instead of mass distribution. Mass distribution is when you have something to announce, like what I said. You have a grand gesture to distribute some free protective equipment, whatever. We can do that, but maybe you can think about tailor-make press releases for certain kind of exclusive, more like an intimate group of journalists you can trust, can bounce off ideas, can develop a story, because it's not about hitting a lot of media outlets. It's about hitting the right outlets to be able to run your story. So don't be afraid. You have built up a good relationship with certain media outlets. Go through the PR process, but tailor-make something for them that you can say, oh, my CEO will be thinking about doing this and that. We have a human interest story. One of our staff, unfortunately, is infected, but that maybe they have a video, diary to do something about it, or CEO has a video diary because somebody famous from a company, people would like to know what you do if you unfortunately, get caught in this virus outbreak. So that kind of thing, I think tailor-make something. You go deep into a story, but not wide. So you don't need a lot of outlets. You just need a few, and that are prominent. They have good channels to publish your story. I think the strategy will possibly work better than mass distribution of press releases at this point. Good focused distribution of press releases, I think, is important.
Yeah, thank you. And I can't resist saying this, but also PR Newswire distribution service as well. So PR Newswire distribution service can also help you.
When your mass distribution, you can select, your mass distribution could be 1,000, you can still find 100. That is too big by any chance, by any standard.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I think we only have time for about maybe 2 more questions. So one of them is how do small brands or companies raise their profile during the COVID-19 when the gestures and donations that they provide are relatively small compared to the large brands, right? So they may be doing something to help out with the crisis, but they may not be as big or as grand as some of the largest companies can do. So how would they be able to raise their profile in this case?
I think it's that when you do when you extend kindness, it's not about how grand sometimes it is. If you can't do big, do it well. That's my point. If you can't do big, you cannot distribute 10,000 masks or whatever equipment in mass quantities. Do it well by by creating a story that people can feel, oh my God, this is so wonderful. So I can't tell you off the top of my head. I have a migraine today, sorry, but. Can't do it big, do it well. I think the quality of your gesture is important. I don't think kindness is measured in sizes. It's measured in the authenticity of that particular gesture.
Great, thank you, Luisa. So I think we're pretty much out of time now. So Luisa, is there anything else you'd like to add for our audience?
I think it's important that we do our bit. I think a lot of people we still struggle with the with some behaviors of not willing to wear a mask or keep the social distance. I think it's important, no matter you believe it or not. There's no scientific evidence to say wearing a mask is not a true protection, but it does protect you if you are this invisible carrier to spread the virus if you're carrying it. So I think at this point in time, it's important we all act, have this good group behavior, that we do something together to protect ourselves and also to protect others by wearing a mask and keep a social distance. And don't try. I think cultural differences that's not the way you behave. It's so important. I think common decency and for the greater good, this all transcends. Whatever cultural differences or individual attitude you have. I think we have to act as one. We are as strong as weakest link. If we don't do it, one person falls, it will spread again. We are at this very critical point because some microbiologists already said that the world could 40 to 60% of people could get infected. So that means if 40% of Hong Kong people get infected, you can imagine it's about 3 million people. I think we are at a very critical stage in the next 2 weeks that we are seeing increase. Just a week ago, we had only 350 cases. Now we have more than about double that now. I think we've got to be careful. Stay home, stay safe, and do the most you can. Play your part. To be self-isolated if you need to be uncertain about your health, and do the bit when you go out. Keep a distance, wear a mask, and be clean, and look after yourself and stay safe. Yeah, and also don't, blindly share news, right? Because and don't share news. Be a bit. I think from a point of view for the greater good for yourself, as much as for the others, it's for the greater good of everybody. We could all go back to normalcy as soon as possible, hopefully. Great. Thank you so much, Luisa. So we just put up a slide here. There's a web address here for you. We've basically here compiled a list of resources about the COVID-19 pandemic on our website. And these resources include a lot of different things, such as a crisis communications toolkit, which gives you strategies to identify when a threat may happen, analyze coverage around a crisis, and craft a genuine and timely response to your audience. We also have best practice tip sheet for how to communicate during this time. And we also have corporate news roundups on the topic of coronavirus that you can gain ideas from seeing what other brands are doing, what other brands are sharing. And a lot of brands are quite innovative in terms of the types of relief efforts that they're offering, to the public by offering either free services or, offering research reports, or donations and things like that. So a lot of corporates are doing a lot in order to try to help, and I think that goes a long way in terms of being able to help you build your brand and to be seen as a corporately socially responsible brand, right? Corporate socially responsible. We also have investor relations, communications, sharing, and best practices specifically for communicating with your shareholders about being more transparent during this time, to communicate some of the risks to the business, disruptions in the supply chain, those types of tips. And we also, lastly, have a COVID-19 human curated dashboard. So this is a news dashboard that gives you all of the news that are global and up to date. Right? So all of the trending news that we see on a daily basis, you can use the dashboard to see what is happening. And these are curated by our human analysts. So hopefully these resources will help all of you, and to help all of you, communicate during this time, because there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of how we should be communicating during this time, because it's not the same as before. And I just really wanted to thank, Luisa again for spending time with us. Very insightful, a lot of very good information. And for the audience, thank you for participating in this seminar, this webinar, sorry. and basically, this concludes our webinar section, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in the next one, which is the Singapore, and then the next one after that is Malaysia. And both of those are going to be in the month of April, so be on lookout for those communications. So in the meantime, just everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, okay, protect yourselves,
and the best of luck to you all. Thank you again, Luisa. Take care.
Take care, Namaste. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.